All right, I guess we are live. All right. So it's a beautiful Sunday, I believe, and I welcome you to this exclusive workshop where we will solve some really tough high level coding questions, and you will get some tips and insights on how to solve this question in an effective manner. Also, these questions will put your programming skills to test. So these would be some really great questions. And in case I'm audible, can I get a yes in the comments? Am I audible? All right. All right. Great. Okay. So before starting, I would like to share this shocking news which I was reading some time ago. And as per the National Employability Report on engineers, Indian engineers lack industry relevant or the industry demanded IT skills to a very, very large extent, which was quite shocking when I read. And moreover, only, a handful of these job applicants possessed good coding skills. From what I understood, this was quite shocking. And what I would like you to do is, I have shared a voting link in the description, so you guys can check that voting link. I have opened the voting, and I'll share the screen so that you guys can even see. All right. What do you think? What was the estimate of people who possessed good coding skills? The voting link is in the description below. For the people who have connected from LinkedIn, you can find that in the captions as well. All right. Let's see. So these are the number of this is the percentage of the number of applicants who possess good coding skills according to that report. And trust me, the number would shock you to its very core. Uh, I think we are heading towards the 10 to 25 range, which was something which I expected as well. All right. I think that would do. I can see where the audience is heading on to. All right. So the answer is 4.6 percentage. Yes, that was the percentage of the applicants who only possess good coding skills. And this figure is actually distressing for sure. And I have no idea what were the factors which led to this conclusion. But this is no doubt a very shocking percentage. And the only thing which I could, jumped up was that there is a huge skill gap between what the industry demands and what is the knowledge the students have possessed. And that is why at Geeks for Geeks we are bringing free workshops, free webinars. We have launched some foundation courses on basic languages so that you can get the fundamentals right, because that is the most important part. And trust me, I think this is the best time to scale it up, and we are with you for sure. All right, all right. So till Mr. Sachin joins, you can call upon your friends, your roommates, your wing members, because this webinar would be very interactive, and we plan to actually share some real crazy insights from what happens in the industry. So you can call upon your friends, and I need you guys to relax, catch a breath, take a snack or something, and let's dive in. I've also shared a query form in the description below. In case you have any queries, you can put it over there, and we would try to address as much possible at the end of the webinar. And there's one more thing: to the people who have shared relevant queries, there would be something special for those guys which I would like to share at the end of the webinar, but there's a special giveaway for sure. All right, all right, let's call upon Sachin. I think he's here. By the way, Sachin teaches the Geeks Classes live course and has some amazing insights to share with you. Hey Sachin.
Uh, Hey, can you guys see me? Am I audible?
I think you are.
Okay, so I'll start. Hello, everyone. So, good evening. My name is Sachin Chandani, and I'm a software engineer at Amazon. So, Amazon India office. And I graduated from Triple IT Hyderabad like few months ago in May. And my majors was electronics and communication, but I'm a software engineer right now because you guys know more than me that it does not matter what your branch is. So, what do we do? Basically, in this workshop, we'll be starting off with some of the insights about the industry, why the companies are judging the candidates the way they are, why the data structures and algorithms is considered to be a common ground for any computer science job. Apart from that, we'll be looking at one of the problems that I picked from somewhere, and that's a good problem that looks like a very, very tough problem, but you'll see the solution for that is just a simple intuition and any concept that you've seen before. So apart from that, let's start with the session. So
All
yeah, thank you Siddharth for inviting me here. I'm really happy to be here.
sure, Sachin. The stage is yours, and I think people are really, really keen to know the Amazon work culture as well. So you could even share that.
Yeah, so I'll go with the Amazon. Amazon is a huge foundation, means a huge institution, and like I've been there for 5 months, and I see means I've learned more than what I learned in 4 years, means regarding the tech stack, regarding the number of problems that we solve there. The culture is amazing. It's like you any of the giants that you go in, you have great amount of opportunities to explore because you get bigger projects, you get bigger amount of basically the bigger systems that you need to work on. Those are not like the college culture that you have. Apart from that, you get the insights from the corporate culture that you have, and as well as you meet a lot of great people. You also meet them in college, but you meet a lot more experienced people in the companies. So, okay, so let's start with, so I just explained about the Amazon culture. So I'd say see few problems, few queries on the best platform for coding. I don't think this problem means there is a best platform for coding, means it depends on what kind of coding you want to do and what is the problem set that you are looking for. This is exactly like everything is available via Google, and you can Google it and you can just explore it. Okay. So is my voice clear, Siddharth? Can you confirm? I think some people are saying it's breaking or something like that. Okay,
Well,
so
I think it's pretty okay. Your voice is pretty okay.
okay. So thank you, everyone. So let's start with a problem that I picked specifically for today's session. So that problem, it might look like a very, very tough problem that might look like it has a lot of things to look at. But as soon as we break it down, as soon as we part it down to few small parts, you'll see this is one of the most generic problems of a particular concept that you regularly see. So if everyone is okay, then I think we can move to the problem statement. Okay. So I'll share my screen because, and one more thing, just a simple insight from the coding interviews in case you have now never appeared for one. Most of the coding interviews are considered to be whiteboard coding. So what is a whiteboard coding? If you are doing it physically, then you are given a marker and a whiteboard, and you have to code your code on that particular basically whiteboard. And if this is an online phone interview, then then you have to code on a Google Doc or an ID. It's not always compulsory to compile and run your code. They just want to focus on the logic and this a little bit on the syntax that you know and what is the thinking behind your solution. So exactly like the same pattern, we'll be starting the problem and the solution, and we'll code it on a Google Doc, means a whiteboard, so that let's see how it goes. Okay. So I'll share my screen and then I'll explain the problem statement, and then we'll see what are the observations behind it and how do we solve this particular problem and what is the most optimal solution that we can get. Okay. So I'll share my screen. Hmm. Can you put it on the stream, Siddharth? Yeah. So I hope you guys can see my screen. So I'll not put the problem statement beforehand because we'll be going part by part on the statement. And I won't be able to see comments till that time. So just let me know any questions after that, and I'll keep checking on the comment boxes in case you have any questions or queries or any clarifications that you need. So this is not a generic problem that you might be able to find on the platform, but the base of this problem is very, very generic, very, very trivial. So let's start with the problem statement. So this problem statement consists of a mathematical theorem. They have already stated a mathematical theorem, and they have not, you just have to use that concept, or you just have to use the steps involved in that mathematical theorem to solve this problem. So this particular problem is based on a mathematical conjecture known as Collage conjecture. You don't have to focus on the maths behind it. Most of the time, it's just the preface of the problem. So it's based on a Collage conjecture. So I'll explain what Collage conjecture is. What Collage conjecture states, you start with a positive integer. You start with a positive integer n. You just take a positive integer and you keep doing certain steps recursively. If n is odd, then you change n to 3n plus 1. And if n is even, then you change n to n by 2. Okay. So you have to do these steps recursively. You do these steps recursively. Recursively as in means you have to do them again and again. And what Collage conjecture states that no matter what the value of n you choose in the beginning, you will always reach 1. The conjecture is that no matter what the value of n that you choose, the sequence will always reach 1. So this is a mathematical theorem. This is still unproved, but the supercomputers have computed it to a certain value, and we can be sure that we can use it for the values that we know. So I'll explain it again. You start with any positive integer, and if the positive integer is odd, then you change it to 3n plus 1. Means if it's 3, then you change it to 3 into 3 plus 1, 10. And if it's 10, then you change it to n by 2. You change it to 5. So I'll do a few examples. I'll work out few examples. So this is just a preface of the problem. The main problem statement is just one line. So few examples, let's work out few examples. So let's say I start with 3. So I know that 3 is an odd number. Odd number, the numbers which are not divisible by 2. So I'll have to change it to 3n plus 1, which it will become 10. 10 is an even number, so I'll change it to 5. 5 is an odd number, so I'll change it to 3n plus 1, which is 3 multiplied by 5 plus 1, 16. 16 is an even number, so 16 by 2. 8 is also an even number, so 8 by 2, which becomes 4. 4 is also an even number, and 2 is also an even number. Then we reach 1. As soon as we reach 1, we have to stop. Okay. So I'll work out one more example. So I'll just copy paste here for this particular example because it's a little bigger one, and I'll explain that one after I copy paste it. If you start with 7, 7 is an odd number, we know that. So 7 multiplied by 3, 21 plus 1, 22. We go with this step. 22 is an even number, so 22 by 2, 11. 11 is an odd number, so 11 multiplied by 3 plus 1. Similarly, if we keep on going, then this sequence is formed. And if you see, after a certain number of steps, you have reached 1. So this is given to you. You pick up any number. If you do these steps recursively, after a finite number of steps, you'll reach 1. Okay. So this is just the preface. So this is just how they explain the problem statement. This is given to you that if you do these recursively. Now let's come to the problem statement. So I'll just have a look at the comment boxes. So in case anyone has any questions. Uh, Anything that I need to repeat? Siddharth, can you verify? Because I won't be able to see. I think we are good to go. So just so these are the few examples, and we are given this situation. Now I'll put the problem statement. You are given a positive integer n. You have to, and one more thing. So let's discuss that as well. So if you see, there are certain number of steps involved when you go from n to 1.
Just one more
There
thing,
are
Sachin.
certain,
Sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
but
yeah,
can you increase the font size? I think that's an issue.
okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, this would do, I hope. Yeah, this would do, I hope.
Okay. So let's start with so I was saying you when you go from n to 1 using these rules, the rules that we have explained means 3n plus 1 or n by 2, there are certain number of steps involved. So if you see this particular thing, from 3 to 1, how many numbers were formed? If you look at this, 8 numbers were formed, correct? Total 8 numbers were formed. So this is considered to be length of the collage sequence for number 3. So the number of numbers that are basically present between when you go from a certain number to 1, then that is considered to be length. So similarly, for this case, what will be the length of the collage sequence for this one? It's going to be 17. If you count the numbers, these should be 17. So 4, 4, 4, 4, and 1. So 17, the length of the collage sequence for any given number till you reach the point 1, you'll have to pass through certain intermediate numbers, and those sequence that is formed is basically the number of the length of the collage sequence. Okay, now we are clear about the theorem. Now we are clear about the length. So you are given a positive integer. You have to find the maximum length of the collage sequence for from 1 to n. So you'll be given a number n, and you will have certain sequence length for 1, you will have certain sequence length for 2, you will have a certain sequence length for 3, you will have a certain sequence length for 4 until the point n. So this is length of the collage sequence. So you have to find the sequence which has the maximum length, means the number which has a maximum collage sequence length. So let's work out few examples. Okay, so if you just, I'll just copy paste this one as well. So if I want to, so I'll just take this. If you see this one, IP is input and output. These are just the abbreviations. If you give it n equals to 3, then for n equals to 1, we know that there is the length 1. For n equals to 2, the length is just 2 to 1, which is 2. For n equals to 3, the length of the collage sequence is 8. So 8 is the maximum length for n equals to 3. Means among 1, 2, and 3, 8 is the maximum length. Okay. Similarly, if I give it 5, what happens in that case? If I give it 5, then in that case, I have 5 options. Either I can take collage sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for what is the length of the collage sequence for 3? 8. For what is the length of the collage sequence for 4? You have to go from 4 to 2 to 1. which is 3. For 5, you go from 5 to 16, 8, 4, 2. So it's 6. Still, the maximum sequence length is 3. Among 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the maximum. So you have to return 8. Okay. Of approaches that we can think of. So I'll give you a minute to take it in. Just read out the problem statement again, and then we'll try to see the intuitions behind it. Okay. So I'll give you a minute to look at the problem statement again. I'll wait for a minute and I'll address your queries in case you have any. No, I see one query. There is no minimum length. So you just have to basically find the length of the collage sequence. If you see what is the minimum length is 1. If the number given is 1, then the length of that sequence is 1. Others might have, okay, how is the length for 5? So if you look at the problem statement, you are given a positive integer n. You have to find the maximum length of collage sequence from among the numbers 1 to n. So for 5, you will have to check the sequence length for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of them. Someone just asked in the comment box, so I'm just answering their query. Yeah, this question can be changed to find the minimum length of collage sequence, but minimum we always know will be of the value 1, because 1 has the minimum length, right? Okay, so I think this should clarify.
I think Sachin will be joining in a minute. There is some kind of lag. Yeah, guys, I think Sachin, there's some internet connection issue. Wait for a minute or so.
Am I audible? Yeah, sorry for the interruption. I think I got disconnected for a minute. So I think we'll just hop in back to the problem statement. I hope you guys can see the screen again. So I'll just give you the problem statement again and just give you a few seconds to recall anything that you might missed. So the problem statement is you have to find the maximum length of the collage sequence from all the numbers 1 to n. So the first approach that we always go with this, and don't worry about the constraints right now. What is the limit on n? What is the limit on the number of basically the input that we can have? Just think about the solution of the problem and try to find the maximum optimal solution that you can find, the most optimal solution that you can find. Okay. So I'll again explain in case anybody is having doubt why for n equals to 5, the answer is 8. For n equals to 5, you have to check for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of them, not just 5. Okay, not just 5. You have to check for all the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, so I'll go the first thing that when you are trying to approach this kind of problem where you don't have any clue what you have to do, you just gather all the facts and you try to deduce a brute force approach for this one. So let's say, what are the facts for this problem? Or what are the steps? If n is even, then n changes to, so I like we increase the font size. So if n is even, then we know we have to change to n by 2. If else, then we have to change n to 3n plus 1. Okay. So we know this thing that if n is even, then we change to n by 2. If that is not the case, then we have to change n to 3n plus 1. Okay. One more thing to notice here. If we do this step, if n is even and we do 3n plus 1, then it becomes n is odd, then we do 3n plus 1, then it changes to an even number. So if I take 3 here and I do 3 multiplied by 3, it will be odd and I add 1 to it, so it will become even. So the number will become even after this step. Okay, so that's just an observation. Other observation, the answer for n equals to 1 is 1. We know that for sequence of length for n equals to 1, we don't have any options to go. We just need to have the answer 1. So if you look at this one, it is a recurrence relation. It's a recursive relation where the next value is dependent on the previous value. So if n is even, then next is n by 2 and previous is n. Similarly, if n is odd, then why and we have a base case as well. So why don't we just deduce a brute force solution, a recursive brute force solution for this one, and try to see if that solves the problem. Okay. So let's first try to deduce a brute force solution, then we'll optimize it. And you'll see optimizing it is not a big deal. Means you'll see the observations and I'll work out a few examples that you'll be able to see that this is the most intuitive solution that you could have, and this is the most optimal one. So let's say you are given an input that solve and you are given an integer n. Okay. So this solve function, what it does, finds the maximum collage length for all numbers from 1 to n. Okay. So we are given an integer, nothing apart from this. We are given a function that, and we have to complete this function. We have to return the maximum length. Okay. So let's start with what we could do. So what we'll do, we'll have an answer, the max length. Let's call it max length. And we know that what is the max length's initial answer? The minimum possible answer is is 1. Okay, we know that the minimum possible. Then what do? We know we have to check for all the values from 1 to n, right? So I'll traverse from all the values for 1 to n, and I'll try to calculate the maximum, the collage sequence length for that number. So I'll try to store this in a variable. So I'll say length I means the length of the collage sequence, and I'll call a function get length, and I'll give it I. Once I get this length, I'll see if if this is greater than my max length, then I'll update my max length. So if length of I is greater than my max length, then I'll update my answer. So why we are doing it in a Google Doc? Because it's the standard practice, and it's generally you'll encounter these. So I'll increase the font size more. So I think this should be clear now. Okay, so I'll increase it a little bit more. So yeah, so I have increased the font size. So let me know if it still bothers. Okay. So I'll explain it again. What do? We are deducing a brute force solution. So brute force is you start with a loop and you try to get the length for all the values from 1 to n, and then you update your answer if the length for I is greater than that, and then the maximum length. So we now have to write this function get length. So how do we write it? Get length. You have an integer n, and you know that it's just a recursive function. Then we have a base case. If n equals to 1, then you have to return 1. Else, if this is not the case, you have to just go according to the problem statement that we have. If this is not the case, if n is odd, if n is odd, if n is odd, then what do? We have to return 1 plus the same function get length for 3n plus 1, right? If this is not the case, you have to return 1 plus get length n by 2. Clear? This looks like the brute force solution, right? Because this is exactly the same thing that we have. Means this is exactly the same thing that was stated in the problem statement. So I'll just look at the, okay. For n equals to, yeah, it depends on the definition that you have. If you look at n equals to 1, then we are considering this to be a sequence length of 1. It depends on the problem statement. In the current statement, we have considered 1 as well. So if you look at 1, if you don't look at, these are 7 elements and this is 1 element. So total length is 8. This just depends on the convention that you have. Okay. So get length function is a pretty simple function. You just have to do this. Okay. So I'll just give you a minute to go through the code again. Why are we adding 1? Okay. So when you go from 2 to 1, the sequence length increases by 1, right? The sequence length will increase by 1. Can I say the length of sequence 2 is 1 plus length of sequence 2 by 2, which is 1, right? This is the recurrence we have. Is that correct? Similarly, can I say for length of 5, It is 1 plus the length of 16. Correct? Right? So we have to add 1 when we are moving from a certain step. So formula is if n is odd, then you have to change it to 3n plus 1. Otherwise, you have to change it to. Is it an assumption that we'll get a unique number every time? You will see, means you'll see that you won't be repeating any of them. Means you don't have to take any assumption, just depend on it programmatically. Okay. So if you look at this brute force approach that we just saw right now, so this brute force approach will solve the problem for us. So I'll just put it down here. This will solve the problem for us, but the only problem here is it might be doing some things more than once, or there is some non-optimal going on. So to observe that, let's try to work out few examples. Okay. So if I just give you this sequence, means the values computed for few of them, then you'll be able to see. If you do the dry runs, here, then let's see what happens. Okay. So these are the dry runs for a particular one. So for n equals to 1, we know that the length of the sequence is 1. And for n equals to 2, the length of the sequence is 2. For n equals to 3, the length of the sequence is 8. For n equals to 4, the length of the sequence is 3. For n equals to 5, the length of the sequence is 6. For n equals to 6, the length of the sequence is 9. And for n equals to 7, the length of the sequence is 17. Okay, so we have worked out few examples based on what we had. But now we have to observe something. So if you look carefully at the examples, if once you are trying to calculate the values for 3, you are going through this sequence 4 to 1. And when you are trying to calculate the value for 4, you are again going through the same sequence 4 to 1. You are again going through the same sequence 4 to 1. You are again going through the same sequence 4 to 1. You are again going through the same sequence 4 to 1. Right? So we are repeating. Right? We are repeating. Correct? Everybody can see. Everybody can see what is happening here. So we are repeating the solutions again and again. And so someone just wanted to comment me on the complexity of the previous solution that we have. Yeah, so if you considered the length of a sequence, average length of a sequence to be x, then you will be doing n times x computation, right? You are doing n times of x computation. Okay. If you consider average length of a sequence to be x for any number n, then you are doing n times x computation. Right? Okay. Okay, so I think we should move ahead. So there was again some glitch. So now we have to optimize this. And to optimize this, we worked out few examples. So what were the few examples? That these are the computations that we are repeating again and again. So we are repeating again and again. So someone just mentioned that they have problem in understanding the problem. So problem is you start with a positive integer and you change it to 3n plus 1 if the number is odd. You change it to n by 2 if the number is even. you do these steps recursively, then you always reach 1. So if this is given to you, then a sequence will be formed from between a number from n to 1. So that sequence has certain length. So the statement is you are given a positive integer n. So you will have some sequences for all the numbers from 1 to n. You have to find the maximum length among them. Okay. You have to find the maximum length among them. So right now we deduce a brute force solution. So brute force solution is you don't do anything special. You just, for each number from 1 to n, you create a recursive function which calculates the length for that sequence using the same recurrence. Okay. So if you have this kind of situation, then you know that you can solve it using brute force. But now we observed few things that we are repeating we are repeating certain parts of it. Means 4 to 1, it is being repeated again and again. If you look at carefully, 5 to 1, this is repeated here as well. This is repeated here as well. So we would want not to compute them again and again, but do some optimization so that these things are stored as well as we could use them ahead. So this is the most basic case of a dynamic programming solution. What is dynamic programming? You deduce a recursive solution. You deduce a recursive solution. And if you see, there are overlapping subproblems. So subproblems is when you try to compute for 3, there is a subproblem for 5. And when you try to compute for 7, there is also a subproblem. If there are subproblems which are overlapping, means the same subproblem you are seeing it again and again, then you store it somewhere so that you don't have to calculate it again and again. Okay. So this is the base generic case of a dynamic. I'll write down the note dynamic programming. So what it does, you have to store anything that you are repeating while computing. So how do we do dynamic programming in this? How do we store the solutions for the subproblem? Our each subproblem is denoted by a number n, right? So our each, and for that we need to store an answer. So what if we use a global variable? What if we use a global array in which we could store these answers so that we don't have to compute them again and again? Okay. So I'll just take this solution and I'll modify it to the dynamic programming solution. And we just have to change this function. Okay. So what do? We declare a global variable, declare a global hash map to store any computation that you did. Okay, so we'll use, in Python, you can use dictionary. In Java, you can use hash map. And in C++, hash map is called an unordered map in integer, and let's call it dp store. Okay, dynamic programming store. Clear to everybody? Okay, so this approach where you do this storing, this approach is specifically known as memoization. So what do? It's very, very simple. Whenever you are computing something, just store it. dp store of n equals to 1. You do this and you return dp store. Similarly, when you are computing here at this step for n equals to odd, when you are computing it, dp store of n, just store this in the array and solve this one. Similarly, whenever you are computing, just store this. So what we'll do in this case, dp store of n is equals to 1 plus get length of n by 2. Okay. So what did we do? I'll just show you again. And last time we did not have a DP store, right? So what DP store is? DP store is nothing but a hash map which stores the data whenever we compute it, and so that we could use it at some point again. So in Python you could use a dictionary. In Java you can use a hash map. So in C++, hash map is called an unordered map. So okay, so you declare a global variable or global hash map. Whenever you're computing something, you store it. Okay. Now the main step. Now what's the main step? So the main step is whenever you enter this function, you just look if the value was computed before or not. So I'll just check if dp store of n does not equals to 0. If that is the case, if it was computed, then I just return from here instead of calling the function again and again. Check if calculated before, then directly return. Okay. Yeah, so it's not to submit, right? So you just have to do verify the syntax. That's why we are doing it on a Google Doc. Okay, so I'll just look at the questions once anybody has any questions. Yeah, so I don't think there are any specific questions. Okay, so I'll just show you this part of the code again. So what do? We declare a global hash map to store any computations that you did, and you don't have to repeat it again and again. You declare a global hash map. Whenever you are doing any computation, you just store that in the hash map. You store that in the hash map. Okay. 1 plus get length of 3n plus 1 is stored, and 1 plus get length of n by 2 is also stored. Yeah, you could use, somebody said it, you could use array as well. But if you look at the problem, just clarification, to calculate the value for 7, you might need to go till 40 as well. Correct? You might need to go to 40 as well. So in that case, you might not know that what is the upper bound of the array elements that you need to declare, right? So if in that case of scenario, it's always safer to use hash map, given that both of them have an insertion complexity of a constant type. Okay, clear? Somebody just said that you are using the same stack memory. No, every time a recursive call ends after this loop, that stack memory will be freed. So the biggest stack will be formed, will be the length of a sequence. Stack memory is same, means here stack memory is the length of the length of any single sequence. So if you just directly go through this, if you look at this solution and brute force solution, there is nothing more, means there is just a simple optimization. If you could reduce a brute force solution, if you could just store the values that you calculated before, and you just directly return from the point where you don't have the where you have the solution, it's just exactly the brute force solution in case you could store the brute force solution. It looks like a very, very complex problem initially. Once you try to break it down, how did we break it down? We just wrote what we have to do. We deduced a brute force solution. We had these facts, and we deduce we deduce. So yeah, it's using exactly the same memory. This is not a memory optimization. This is a time optimization for this problem. So initially, in case you had an x average length of x, and then you had n different numbers, then the complexity would have been n multiplied by x. But now, since you won't be pre-computing for any of the values, the complexity of the time complexity that you will have for this approach is the maximum length of any sequence. Means it won't be the n multiplied by x, it will be the maximum length of the sequence that you can have among 1 to n. Okay. I think that should clarify the problem. Uh, any questions that you have? Any highlighted questions? So I'll just wait for a few minutes in case anybody has any questions specific to this problem, and then we'll move to the next part. Yeah, this is a very, very good problem. Means this is not a generic problem that you will find on the online coding platforms, but it was asked to someone. So it's a good problem. Means if you look at this problem, this looks like a mathematical problem at first, then but they give you the fact, then you just have to look at this observation that you are computing something again and again. Even if you just work out these two examples, then you'll be able to see that you are repeating, right? So somebody just have a question about the uh, time complexity of this. So I'll just explain to them that what is the time complexity for this. Okay, so initially, brute force solution is x is the average length of a sequence. Means if you the length of one, length of two, and n is the value, n is the number of numbers. Then the brute force complexity is brute force is n multiplied by x. Correct? So for all of them, n multiplied by x. But for optimized one, you are not calculating anything again and again. So it will be the complexity will be the maximum value of n x that you can have, because whenever you have computed something, so it will be the maximum length of the sequence that you can have, maximum length of the sequence that you'll have among those. Okay, so in that case, this is how you, so it's a collage conjecture, and collage conjecture is a mathematical problem. In case you want to read more, you can go through Wikipedia. So we just this is one of the problems that we discussed in our during our live classes, Geeks for Geeks live classes. So this was part of the course of dynamic programming, and this is means this problem tells you an idea where you have a difficulty deducing the problem using a bottom-up approach, but you can do it using memoization once you knew the brute force solution. So this is from a syllabus of Geeks for Geeks live classes. So I just picked it right from there. Okay, so any other questions that you might have? Otherwise, I think we're done with the explanation. I'll ask GFG to include this document as well. So Siddharth, would you like to take over and we could take some questions if they have?
All right. This session was pure fire. And actually, I was reading the comments, and people were really interacting with the whole problem, the solution. And I think we got some good reviews as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So that's why I
So,
think we can stop sharing the
we'll,
screen. So we'll.
yep. So we can start with the queries which I have received via the Google form.
Yeah.
All right. So the first query is by Sakalya Mitra. Uh, how helpful is competitive programming for solving coding interview questions, especially when it comes to FAANG companies?
So, okay, so I'll tell you what competitive programming is. Competitive programming is basically you have a lot of data structures algorithms problem. And when you are bored from the data structures algorithm problems that you have for interviews and the syllabus you have, you need to basically you are searching for a bigger platform where you can have a collection of problems. And there are people who, for those people, this is just a sport. They love to create new problems and you love to solve them. So if you are doing competitive programming, I think it will be really, really helpful. But if you're not doing it, it's not a compulsion. Means it's not means if you're doing a competitive programming, then it will definitely help you for the companies, because if you are good competitive programming, it means you are good at data structures algorithm. It might just take you less efforts than the others to go through the interview problems, because your basics will be really good, but it is not a compulsion. If you if you're not into it, just don't put most of your time on the competitive programming, learning competitive programming.
All right. So it does give you a edge, but it's not in
Yes.
compulsion.
Yeah, it's not. I have seen people means did not ever touch code forces, code chef, hacker rank, and they are in FAANG companies, means the people who are asking.
All right. So this myth has been busted for now. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Ayush asks, please suggest some tips on how to become a good coder when it comes to just starting up with coding? So, as a fresher, what are some tips to be a good coder?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of tips. First step is just pick up one programming language, one or two if you have a specific use cases. What the people do is generally they revolve around the tech stack. Means I want to learn Python, I want to learn C++, I want to learn JavaScript, I want to learn Java because these are the programming language is nothing. They might have their own use cases. That is the only reason you have a lot of options in tech stack, and the companies are judging based on data structures and algorithm. The reason is because this gives us a common ground to judge candidate independent of the tech stack. Means so the first step is pick up one programming language among the more popular ones, and don't pick anything which is hard just because it is easy to write. It you might struggle for a month if you pick up a popular one, but yeah. And the second thing is, if you're a fresher, if you're just preparing for your internship and basically placements, then I think you should more focus on your problem solving skills rather than going towards the projects that you can put. A couple of projects gives us a basic understanding of how the tech stack work, how databases work, how operating systems work, but you should more focus on your problem solving skill. You can learn when you once you go in the industry.
All righty, that sums it up. The third question is by Nidhi. Why is it so hard to choose among the languages to start learning coding? I initially had a lot of interest in coding, but feels like it's just vanishing somewhere, and I don't wish to let it go. So, how to again get back on track, and how to start with coding again? And this is something which I have seen a lot of people face these kind of problems. Their coding motivation dies real soon. So one good
Yeah,
question,
so
and they if they can't solve it, it's already gone. So what do you advise to
yeah,
those guys?
so it happens means like you solve 50 problems of cakewalk and easy. Once you move to medium problems, that the problems start taking half an hour to just think of the solution, and then people just lose it. People just say, why to do so? Means why do I have to do these kind of problems, which like will take the whole day for myself, and I still can't figure out the solution. So I think the best advice would be just keep that solution, keep the problem in mind and away from your eyes for a certain point of time. So when you have something in background, I think you'll come up with the solution and start reading. And if you're not still you don't get the solution, it's completely okay to look at the editorials. Means people say that I solve all the problems by looking at the editorial. Initially, it's completely okay. Once you get a hang of it, I think it should be much easier. Means I think if you're losing your motivation, you just need to get away for a few days and just keep the problems in your mind so that you can sum up whatever you have till now. So because it has happened a lot with me as well. I keep a problem in my mind and the solution I get is after 7 days. I just keep the problem statement in my mind.
All right. Okay. Um, hmm. Moving on, Aditya asked, "What should I do if I'm stuck at a point and have no clue about how to progress in the coding interview? For example, if I have been given a problem and I don't know what to do next, should I ask help from my interviewer, or should I simply tell them that I don't know the answer to this question?"
So once you don't understand the problem statement, there can be two things. One is you understood the problem, but you don't know the direction that you want to go for. And once is you don't understand the problem statement. If you don't understand the problem statement, just ask your interviewer to explain it to you again. List down the facts that you understood. Means it's completely okay to write anything which is not code in the interview as well. So I often write notes in my interviews. People often write notes in their interviews. So what I understood from this problem and what are the examples. Let's say you don't know the direction that you want to go for. Just you might have understood certain parts of it. So try to code that solution. So I remember someone asked a rectangle, basically a union of rectangle problem for me, and the start point for me was in that problem. Just some if you have a background, you can understand. Start point for me in that problem was just check if two rectangles are merging or not, and then you continue, then you continue, then you continue. So I did not understand the problem at first. This was 2 years ago. And after that, at the starting point, that person, okay, just do this. Can you do two rectangles are given? Check if they are okay. Now we have to check for this. Then we moved ahead and then we coded the solution. Just try to code out, try to discuss the part you understood for that problem.
All right. So discussing the problem is no big issue, I believe.
No big issue. You can ask for help as well. Means they are there to help us. Help.
Makes sense. All right. Just one last question. Can you tell us how important is DSA when it comes to cracking interviews of product-based companies?
Yeah. So
If
I
I'm
think
weak, so the question is, if I'm weak at DSA, what should I do? Is DSA really that important as the other people say?
so. DSA gives you a foundation. So I have explained this before. Like if a company is hiring for a role, let's say an MNC is hiring for a role, that MNC has 50 different departments, thousands of employees, hundreds of teams, right? Every team might have a different work, different tech stack, different systems that they are working. How do they judge the person that that person will be able to work in the tech stack that we put in, right? That person, the company cannot judge, go according to the tech stack and start. What if that company needs to basically dismiss that department and put those employees into a different department? Then what happens? So they don't want somebody who's good at one thing. They want somebody who's good at problem solving skill, right? That is the main issue that they choose DSA, sometimes operating systems as the common ground to look at the candidate's efficiency, right? So that's why the DSA is considered. I think it's like the most important thing, but it's not compulsion. But at least you should be. If you don't know what are the data, so DSA is what data structures and algorithm. If you don't know what is stack, if you don't know what are queues, then how do you expect to work on large scale system? Right? They don't want you to be a competitive programmer. They just want you to have an understanding of how systems work, right?
All right, all right. That sums it up. So Sachin, I think this was a fabulous session, and I
Yeah,
think
thank.
people were really interacting in this session. So that is
Yeah,
a good news, and that would be it.
yeah,
So, guys,
thank you
in
so much.
case you have any other questions, you can always connect to Sachin over LinkedIn. We have provided the link in the description below. All right, Sachin, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Bye bye. All the
Bye
best
bye.
to you. Yeah.
All right. So, all right. So, I really hope this session was a great session and you enjoyed. And we are actually bringing more sessions such as these. So, in case you really love the session, can I get a yes in the comments? So, someone is saying so motivated, pumped up, which is good because that was the sole goal behind this session. All right. All right. We are bringing more workshops and webinars on Java, on cracking FAANG companies, cracking service based companies, a new type of coding problems, things not to do while starting coding. So we are bringing a lot of webinars for sure. And now I actually wanted to address one thing which I found a lot. Even as you guys can see that in the form Nidhi asked that people lose motivation while coding, and they really can't excel. They really can't push their boundaries when it comes to coding. So I know many of you guys are really aiming to crack interviews of top companies, and I can see that through the Google form that almost 60 to 70% of the queries received are regarding something related to cracking Amazon or Microsoft or something like that. And I even interacted in the last week. I interacted with some people, and I found out that one issue which is very known to all of us, but is still missed, is that we can't push ourselves. There is I don't know, we have the potential, but the challenging nature sometimes die out, especially when it comes to coding. And that is why at Geeks for Geeks we have a very special and the most premium courses, which is Geeks Classes Live. You guys can check it out. The link is in the description below. But and I can I can always tell you about the benefits which the course entails, and how many good problems you'll be solving. You can see Sachin is the mentor. He actually knows how to get the concept inside in a very clear, in a crisp manner. But the one thing which I would like to point out about this course is that it really pushes your boundaries. There are only about 40 to 40 people who would be studying with you. So this course is a limited batch course and comes with a lot of benefits. But the one benefit which is really beneficial is that it pushes your boundaries. It challenges you to the ultimate. So you guys can check out the course. You can see the benefits, you can see the timings and all. You can, if you have any doubts, you can even call the consultant. You can find the number on the course page only. But I hope that you guys can have a look at the course page. Also, we are bringing webinars, so I would love to see any other topics which we have missed on. You guys can simply comment down, and we would love to host webinars for those topics as well. So again, best of luck. Think wisely and have a good Sunday. And obviously, take care. These are some hard times. And about the file, we'll share it in the link in the description right now. Thank you, guys.